Going live. There it is. Hello, horror fans. Pete here from the Lasser Cast, and I'm with my co-host and good buddy, Mr. Dr. Zayas God, Danny Torkel. Danny, you ready to talk about Quiet Part Loud?
I am. This is the first time that in the 2+ years of us doing horror content on the Lassercast that we are reviewing a podcast, another podcast.
Yeah,
And I guess it's appropriate that it's done by Monkey Paw Productions, which is Jordan Peele's production company.
right.
Nope, Us, Get Out, all done through Monkey Paw. So right off the bat, this has some pretty credible horror backing behind it. Quiet Part Loud. I've only listened to the first 3 episodes.
Same here.
Have you listened to any more?
No.
Okay, yeah, I was afraid that if I listened to episode 4 on the way home, I would start talking about that
Right.
during this review.
Ditto.
This is, correct me if I'm wrong, this is a Spotify exclusive
Correct.
podcast.
Yeah.
Yes. So this is definitely when I usually listen to podcasts, aside from our own, I usually listen to. I don't usually listen to stories. I usually listen to guys like us talking about shit that I want to hear about, like the King Cast, and listening to people get interviewed about Stephen King or other horror movie podcasts or sports podcasts or pro wrestling podcasts that I'm into.
Yeah.
So this was really the first time that I've ever even delved into something like this.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting. It kind of feels like you're listening, like you go to a play, but then instead of watching it, they blindfold you and you just listen to it. It's like an audio book, but read with an ensemble. And it's really cool. I'm really enjoying this so far.
Yeah, I because I was afraid I would like forget people's names and stuff. I only really concentrated on the writers and the producer and the director for the show. But this show clearly has really excellent production value. Like they have really great sound effects. There's one scene that's in a convention in the first episode, and you feel like you're in a convention. There's scenes where you're like in a building, an abandoned building, and you can feel it just by the sound of the echoes. So the production quality is really great. I wish I had written down the people that worked on that so I could give them praise. But if you guys are listening to this, you guys deserve some praise. The people behind the show, I'm very interested in. As you already said, Jordan Peele is the producer of it, but then Clay McLeod Chapman is one of the writers on it. And Clay's always been kind of on my radar. He has a big presence on Twitter, and pretty much like if you're following him, he's just tweeting about this show. Just everyone's tweet, anything that anyone says about the show is going on Twitter from him, right? And he has a book called Whisper Down the Lane, which is like a horror story about like satanic panic, and it's like part in the 80s, part in modern day. I'm listening to that actually right now. And then he has another book that just came out called Ghost Eaters, which is a really interesting take on a ghost story. And I think I'm going to go to that next after I finish Whisper Down the Lane. The other writer is Mac Rogers, who I am not as familiar with, but it seems like he's done a lot of these audio dramas. When I looked into him, there was a couple of audio dramas listed. There was Life After, Steal the Stars, Give Me Away. So these, I think I might actually move on to these after we finish this show, just to see what they're like.
Yeah, no, that sounds like. I mean, I it's been a long time for me, like reading a physical book, but I've been, since the pandemic, I've been trying to plow through as many audiobooks as possible, and I'm always looking. I have like 4 audiobooks that I started, and then like just I need to get back to because we've been just watching so much for the channel, but yeah, I definitely need to get back to just listening to stuff and 21st century reading, as they call it.
Yeah, well, until then, though, you can listen to this. What's cool about it is it's like in little bite-sized chunks. Every episode is less than a half hour, especially if you include like the recap and the credits and the commercials, right?
Yeah, and that is the best part for me, because my commute to work is legit one episode of this show.
Oh, perfect.
from the time I leave my house, if I put on an episode the second I get into the car, by the time I get to work and then I transfer from, like, I put in my AirPods and I like walk from my parking space into the building, I've knocked out one episode. So yesterday I listened to episodes 1 and 2 on my way to and from work, and then I listened to episode 3 today on my way to work, and then I sped home and to talk about these 3 episodes with you. So
Nice, man.
it works out perfectly for me. This is like 20 minutes door to door. Like, you need to run out for an errand and around the corner, and you're going to be in Rite Aid or Walgreens for 10 minutes. This is a perfect show.
Yeah. And I mean, I listen to it when I drive to work too. And I'm really digging it. Obviously there's a mystery behind it all, right? And you're trying to figure out what is this sort of entity, this audio entity that seems to have a lot of power. And so we follow around a radio host who's not exactly a very appealing main protagonist. You've compared him to Alex Jones. I think he's kind of like maybe like a Bill O'Reilly, maybe even
or Rush Limbaugh.
Rush Limbaugh. Yeah. But before we even talk about Rick Egan, who's played by Tracy Letts, and he's pretty much the main focus of this whole thing, I just want to talk about like the context of this show, because the modern day part of the story takes place in 2009, and it takes place in New York. You're in Brooklyn. I grew up in Staten Island. I lived in Staten Island most of my life. This show makes me think of my hometown. I mean, the most of the show takes place on Staten Island. Yeah. So it encapsulates this time period post 9/11, between like 9/11 itself and 2009. And that was a very interesting time to be a New Yorker. We all had that unity after 9/11 where we were all trying to be together and then like take care of each other and, show that we wouldn't be, defeated by this horrible event. But yet there was this racism, this hatred towards Muslims. And that's a big part of this show.
And I'm going, I don't want to talk shit about Staten Island.
No, go ahead. I mean, I do all the time.
I mean, if you're a New Yorker, if New York is obviously a very blue state, that's not me being political, that's just a fact. But if there is a red part of New York City, it is Staten Island. So yes. The fact that like this Rush Limbaugh type is calling out like a sleeper cell of Muslim youths on Staten Island, and really the main focus of this are these 3 Muslim teenagers, the Staten Island 3.
The Staten Island 3.
They go missing after 9/11, and this character Rick Egan, this Rush Limbaugh type, he just just because 9/11 had just happened, he takes the opportunity to fabricate a story that these 3 Muslim teenagers who have gone missing must be a sleeper cell of terrorism. And if that was going to appeal to a group of New Yorkers, it would probably appeal to the Staten Islanders. I mean, that's just it. It's if they get offended by that, they can leave a comment on the video. But I think that is part of what the writers might have been going for, because like you said, you're a native Staten Islander. Staten Island is a big part of the show, and I'm willing to go with the idea that it was chosen for a reason. Like, they could have picked any neighborhood in Brooklyn or any neighborhood in the Bronx or Queens, but they went specifically with Staten Island. So
yes, Danny, that actually kind of opens up an interesting door too. But I was gonna say, if they really get mad at you for ragging on Staten Island, they should subscribe to our channel too, because
then they can hate listen the way Rick Egan describes the way his viewers hate listen to him. And I know for a fact a lot of people who hated the Alex Joneses, the Rush Limbaughs, and the Bill O'Reillys, they watched and they were part of that viewership all the time because they wanted something to complain about the next day. and you'd go to work and you would complain about, did you see what that piece of shit said on their show last night, or did you hear what that son of a bitch said on the radio? And that is a big part. I think it works both ways politically. I think we hate listen and we hate watch things a lot.
Yes. And this podcast does a really great job of capturing the feel of that talk radio, that kind of that right-wing talk radio. Like it sounds just like, if you were scrolling through the radio dial, you would hear Bill Egan and his co-host, Debbie, that's on there.
Was it Gabby?
Oh, I'm so sorry, Gabby. You're absolutely right, Gabby, Debbie. Whatever.
It's funny because I grew. It does bring me back when I was younger. My dad was an avid listener of Don Imus. I grew up on WFAN, which is Sports Radio New York. Yeah. And in the mornings, it was the Don Imus show, and it was very little sports, but it was a lot of commentary and out there gags and. If a lot of people liked Imus, and then obviously Imus got himself into a lot of trouble and he got himself kicked off the radio with some very inappropriate comments.
Right.
And so with me growing up where my dad was a loyal Imus fan for most of his run, to hear this and then, post 9/11, having been in New York, a native New Yorker, having lived through 9/11, you're right. This show really does kind of put me back into that, post 9/11 era where I had come home from college and you're just kind of watching the city try to rebuild itself. And, Giuliani was still a hero to the world at that point.
Oh, man. Yeah.
It was a very this show really does I feel like this is going to hit very differently for New Yorkers than it is going to hit for somebody who might be in Los Angeles or not you in Texas but a native Texan who was thousands of miles away from New York during 9/11. I feel like this show really does do a good job of capturing that feel.
Absolutely. And as someone that grew up on Staten Island, you were saying before, they could have picked a different borough. They could have done a different part of Brooklyn. What's interesting about Staten Island is that they reference Willowbrook, right? Willowbrook Hospital. And that's a very notorious hospital in Staten Island. Willowbrook, if people don't know, to give context to people that aren't from New York or Staten Island, Willowbrook is essentially a asylum. It was for mentally ill people. And what happened with Willowbrook was they started out very ambitious. They had enough staff for the hundreds of people that they had living there. But over time, there were budget cuts and they had less and less staff. And eventually you just had one person for every 100 inmates, right?
And that sounds like a good, that sounds like the plot of a horror movie. So
right. I'm sure Michael Myers would walk right out of there. Yeah. And so Willowbrook eventually had a fire. It shut down. And so Rick Egan
is the building still standing?
It is.
Where is it in Staten Island?
Kind of in the center of Staten Island, kind of by the College of Staten Island. Yeah. So, he goes to Willowbrook in the second episode. And when he's there, there's a sign that says Cropsey was here or Cropsey lives here or something like that. And Cropsey is an urban legend in Staten Island of a serial killer kidnapper who would prey on children. And there's even a Cropsey documentary that came out.
I think it's actually on Shudder. It's all over streaming. I think it's streaming for free on multiple platforms.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously it seems very realistic to me. And I tweeted about this and Clay McLeod Chapman responded. He was like, "Oh, I hope we got the locations right or whatever, because obviously they're writing about this place." And I said, well, make sure you get the accents right for the Staten Islanders. But I got to say that it's reminding me of home. They keep talking about Midland Beach. The people that they talk to from Staten Island are Muslim people. And so they don't have that sort of that Italian kind of thick accent that a lot of us do. I don't really have mine anymore, but that's the primary focus. So let's kind of bring it up to speed. So Rick Egan, he starts making these claims about these Muslim boys and saying they're in a sleeper cell. And what happens is he gets a recording that mentions Staten Island. And it also talks about an attack on, I believe, October 18th. and then he like makes this big broadcast, and they just basically shut down the subways, and nothing happens. And he basically says, "Well, nothing happens because I made this announcement."
He
But
also receives a package with white powder in it that he claims is anthrax.
right,
And that plus this ominous terrorist recording leads him to, like, broadcast out all these warnings to New Yorkers. Like he says, I hope everybody on October 18th chooses to stay home from work that day. You
right,
know,
right.
so
So he, is kind of using his power because he has this big loyal audience, and we see the fallout from his power because the Staten Island Three are still missing by 2009, and he begins to investigate them. We'll explain why he starts to investigate them, but he goes to the house of one of the three. There's oh shit. Okay, well Danny just popped out, but I'll keep summarizing it until he pops back on. Um, so he goes to the house of one of the three Staten Island Three kids, and he pretends to be a pest control guy, saying that he's from Vernon. There we go. I'm just talking about when he goes to the kid's house.
yeah, sorry about that. I leaned over to move my camera and I literally hit the X button to end the video.
Oh yeah. Let's not do
All
that.
right, I'm back.
So anyway, I was just explaining how he goes to the house of one of the Staten Island Three, and he's talking to the mother because he got in basically saying that he's part of the he's an exterminator, and he's looking around.
Threatens to evict her, even though he's such an asshole.
Right. And so the kid's sister comes in. Her name is Noor, and she basically shuts him down. And she starts saying that like she had to have an escort take her to the subway every day for like months after he made his broadcasts. And they make a point to point out that Muslim people even before 9/11 would have horrible racist things said to them. Like her hijab was taken off of her head
Oh yeah. I mean,
before
hey,
9
look,
11.
I've been a teacher in New York City schools since 2007,
Oh,
and multiple times over the course of my career, I have had to I have been privy to dean interactions because students pulling hijabs off of Muslim girls. And now the school that I work in is in a very religious Jewish neighborhood, and there's been over the course of the last 6 to 7 years, it not happened a lot, but there has been some instances of tension between our heavy Muslim population and the of the school and the Jewish populations of the neighborhood. So this still goes on today.
yeah. Yeah.
It's been going on. So like the stories that Noor is telling Rick are things that like we've literally experienced as teachers in the New York City system.
Yeah. And there's a montage of sorts, like an audio montage, where he's going around and he's interviewing Muslim people, and they're just basically talking about their horrible experiences. And one guy says that he wakes up extra early to wash the graffiti off of his,
Yeah.
store or whatever. Another guy talks about how, like, oh, maybe those kids got picked up by like some sort of, government secret agency. They talk about this one guy says this one line like, uh, you could just tell by the look they gave you that if nobody else was around, they would kill you. He says something like that. And it's just like really horrible stuff. This is a horror podcast, but it's just that horrible real life stuff that like you're not even making this up. This is a true example. I mean, it makes sense that Jordan Peele is the producer of this because there are horrible things in all of his movies that have nothing to do with the supernatural at all, just about race.
Yeah.
So, but I think that we should talk about the supernatural element of this, though. Did you want to kind of explain it to the best of your abilities?
Well, so in the first episode, Rick, who's played by Tracy Letts,
right.
who I love Tracy Letts from Lady Bird. I thought this guy should have gotten an Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actor. I feel like as a dad, I always gravitate towards good dads in movies. I love when they present really positive father figures in movies. It makes me feel happy. because obviously, for good reason, moms get all the credit. And I believe that was the year Allison Janney won the Oscar for I, Tonya. Speaking of good mothers, LOL. But the mom from, oh God, well, I can't, Roseanne's sister.
Roseanne's sister.
Roseanne.
Yeah, she's in Scream 2, right? That actress.
Yes. Laurie Metcalf. Yes.
Laurie Metcalf, yeah.
Laurie Metcalf was nominated, and I thought she should have won Best Actress for playing, or Supporting Actress rather, for playing Lady Bird's mother in that movie. Tracy Letts played the father, and he was my favorite character in that movie. He was such a good dad in that movie. So to hear him play Rick Egan is such a jarring twist from that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm sorry. I just wanted to give a shout out to Tracy Letts, and I loved him in Lady Bird. He's also in Little Women too.
Oh, okay.
So he obviously has a good relationship with Greta Gerwig.
Greta Gerwig.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe he's going to be in Barbie. Who knows?
Maybe.
And he's also a playwright and a screenwriter. So he's a super talented guy.
Yeah.
But he is Rick Egan, and Rick he goes to this convention. He meets, he's at a bar, and he meets this woman who tells him he has a face. What?
After the convention, he's at the bar.
Yes, after the convention, he's drinking at a bar. He's just had a really kind of negative interaction with his ex-wife and his daughter. And this woman kind of picks him up at the bar. And it's so funny that, like, they make a big deal about when he goes back to the hotel. He's like, look, this is really stupid, but you're going to have to sign this NDA that says you know that everything is consensual. So there might even be some layers to this character that are even more effed up than we don't know.
Oh, no.
But so he thinks he's in for like a night of like hot sex in a hotel. And then the woman kind of forces him to listen to this recording. And it's like this sound that just kind of creeps inside of him and like messes with his mind a little bit. And like the podcast makes it seem like he passes out from it and wakes up the next morning.
Right.
And she's also like, oh, we should leave your camera on or leave your recording on.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, you're so kinky. But really, it's so that he has a recording of this. What is it called? The wolf cry? The hunting cry?
The hunting cry, I believe. That's the name of the third episode. Yeah.
The name of the third episode, the hunting cry.
Hunting cry, yeah.
And as he starts to research into the Staten Island 3 and what happened, especially to this one kid, and he ends up going to that Willowbrook, the hospital in Staten Island. He keeps hearing this sound over and over again, and it keeps like messing with him, and he tries to play it for other people, and it messes with them too. Like in episode 3, he plays it for like a former like radio partner of his.
Right, like a tech guy, yeah.
Like I was envisioning that in like a movie.
Okay.
And to me, like if this was a movie, this character would have just gone like glass-eyed, stone-faced, like completely like entranced and like hypnotized by this noise.
Yeah, right.
And we find out that like these hunting cries are these sounds that like they attach themselves to the listener.
Yeah.
For life.
Right.
And I even said to you before we started recording, I was like, it's fucked up, but I like as effed up as it is, I also not really sure I understand it quite yet. And it's something that I really can't wait to get deeper into as I listen to more episodes.
Right. It's funny because, we talk about horror so much, and it's like, if you're just doing audio horror, that's the only sense that you're working with is sound.
So I'm going to bring up, oh God, what's the name of this movie? There was this really great movie, horror movie about a Canadian radio show. And there was like a zombie outbreak while the disc jockey is on the air. But the virus, like the zombie virus, is spread through audio waves, through sound waves.
Yeah.
And this particular scene that I was talking about, where he plays the recording for his buddy, it reminded me of that. And
Sure.
oh god, it's bothering me that I don't remember the name of this. Stephen McHattie was in it. Yeah, anybody who has seen the movie will know from my description what I'm talking about.
Sure,
But
sure.
that's what it reminded me of. I'm sure I'll remember as soon as we stop recording.
Nice. You could say it in the comments. That one episode of Twin Peaks that is on the 101 scariest horror movies that we talked about on our show.
Oh yeah.
That episode has a sequence where a character starts saying crazy shit into a radio, and it affects every single person that's listening to it too. So the idea of like sound affecting people, hypnotizing people, controlling people, is a really interesting idea. And obviously, it's like your go-to for audio, right? Because you want to freak out the listener.
Yeah.
As we go through the interactions that Rick has with people, you're right. He does play it for his friend Vernon in the third episode, which that kind of made me laugh for two reasons. One is because he says Vernon Exterminators when he goes to see the mom in the second episode. It's like, oh, he's just saying his friend's name. Then the other one, because it's like, I was thinking of fucking Ernest. Like, because he said, at one point he goes like, hey, Vern. And I was like, is that Ernest? Is he like make a little Ernest reference? But anyway, I did also think that when I heard that scene with his former coworker. And what you see too is that in the interactions he has, even with the people that were close to him and profited from him, he's hurt them and messed them up too. Like, obviously, he's had this effect on the Muslim people, but then this one guy said that, like, his counselor said that Rick was this, like, negative, or he's a black hole or something like that, I think he said. And you get the idea that there is something simultaneously special about Rick, but then also like horrible about Rick, because I mean, you see tons and tons of examples of the horrible aspect. In that first episode, when he's at that convention, he says something about like, oh, I really care about my fans. This is all about my fans. And then like the very next scene, he's talking to his daughter on the phone. He's like, oh, these people suck. I hate these people.
Yeah. I mean, it really makes you wonder how much of these people, all of them, whether they're Bill O'Reilly or Tucker Carlson or Rush Limbaugh, Alex Jones, how much of it just starts as a character that they're playing before it becomes their life.
Yeah.
It's really like it's very interesting. By the way, I looked it up. The name of the movie was Pontypool.
Pontypool, I've heard of that. Yeah.
Yes, that's the name of the movie where Stephen McHattie is a disc jockey in Canada, and there's an audio zombies are spreading through like an audio virus.
Sure.
So great movie.
Oh, yeah, I'll have to check it out. But yeah, you were saying that like he messes with people, right? Like because like he's this character. He's one side is like this character that he's trying to like rally listeners to do things, and then on the other side he's just
his Crusaders, right?
Right, and that's the name of his show, right? Is the Crusade, right? Or Crusaders. That's the name of his radio show. But like everyone he's messed up. Like he's messed up his wife. Like his ex-wife talks to him on the phone at one point, and she says that like people come to their house and like harass her based on like interviews that he's done and stuff like that. His personality is so over the top, and it seems to be connected to this sound. Because the woman that plays the sound from initially, she says something along the lines of that, like, it starts out small, but then it grows inside of your skull and it gets bigger and bigger. And her voice gets altered too. And then she says something like, you have the voice that could like gather people, or people could rally around you. Like people keep saying things to him like your voice could make people follow you. You could get followers.
He has, and it's funny because like while he's a repugnant character, he has Tracy Letts, obviously the actor, has a great voice, and the way his voice comes across as Rick Egan, it really is cool. Like it is a voice that if it were saying something I liked hearing, I would listen to more often. So I totally do get that idea, but also like we've been saying, there's this like air of supernatural to everything. Like, who was this woman? Was she even real? You know, are we going to find out that, you know, what or who she was and how she's connected to the Staten Island Three? You know, I'm just looking forward to listening to more. Like, I can't wait to go to work tomorrow, just because. I mean, let me rephrase that. I don't want to go to work tomorrow, but I'm excited to listen to episode 4 on my way to work tomorrow.
Yes, yes. Like kind of like one last thing I wanted to throw in there is that it kind of reminds me a little bit of Bird Box too by Josh Mallerman, and we've interviewed.
I swear to God, I was thinking that. And A Quiet Place also, where it's
Right.
like where it's based on one of the senses,
Right.
and just everything is geared towards, you know, one sense. And obviously, in Bird Box, when you're blinded, you have to work by audio.
Right. Mallerman, I love Mallerman. I think he's like my favorite horror writer, honestly. And we've had him on the show too. If you guys ever want to
Yes,
check
we
out
have
the interview,
great interview.
yeah. But in Bird Box, here's kind of a spoiler for the book and for the movie. But a lot of the people, when they see this thing, whatever this entity is, they just kill themselves, randomly. But there are some people that see it and kind of go crazy. And I feel like we see those kind of people in this show, people that have been affected by the noise. Obviously, there's the woman in the hotel room. Then at one point, he goes and he talks to a ornithologist. I don't know if I can say that the right way.
Yes.
Bird watcher. That guy's loony too. It's loony. That's kind of funny. And then at the very end of the third episode, where we just left off, there's this guy that claims to know Egan. And at the very end of that episode, he plays a clip of Egan's daughter talking. So it's a great cliffhanger because it's like, whoa, what's going on here?
Yeah.
So, I mean, we'll see. We're going to cover all 12 episodes. I figured that Danny and I could do like 3 episode
4
blocks.
episodes of 3 episodes each. Yeah.
Yeah, like an hour each. So, but let us know if you guys are fans of this show. If you guys have recommendations for other podcasts like this, I would love to listen to some more. So give us some recommendations. Did you have anything else you wanted to add, Danny?
No, I'm really, this is like I said at the beginning, this is the first time that we're covering something like this, but it's even really more the first time that I'm doing anything like this, where I've never actually listened to an episodic, story-driven podcast before. So it's just really interesting on multiple levels to me, and I'm really enjoying it so far.
Nice. Yeah, so if you haven't subscribed to the Lastercast, please do. We just finished talking about Interview with the Vampire on AMC. Danny is reviewing Chucky. He's like a little behind, but he's catching up with that. We covered.
Yeah, I just finished episode 7. I think what I decided is I'm just going to kind of, it's 8 episodes for the season. I have reviews up for episodes 1 through 4. So I might just do an episodes 4 through 8, like finish the second season, because each episode has been so much crazier than the last one. Like, characters literally on this past episode are just blowing up, like exploding in like fountains of blood. So
wow.
I feel like if I tried to break them up into different episodes, I'd get lost. I'd rather just collectively talk. So next week for the finale, I will cover the second half of Chucky season 2. Just an absolutely bonkers season of television.
And speaking of Chucky, I have an interview that I am editing right now with Tom Holland, who directed the first Chucky movie, Child's Play.
Not to be confused with Spider-Man.
Right. And also, Tom Holland also directed this movie, Fright Night, which I can't remember if Herschel Walker is saying, is that Fright Night is bad or is it good? I didn't hear his little rants that he did.
Oh, dear Lord in heaven. Oh, my God. I listened to that this morning and I lost several brain cells.
Wow. Yeah, well, whatever the case is, Fright Night is awesome. I interviewed Tom Holland, and that interview should be going up next week on our channel, probably Monday. But we have tons of horror content on the Lastercast, so make sure you guys are around here for it.
I would love if the lasting remnants of Herschel Walker's attempted political career is that Fright Night gets more popularity.
Hell
because
yeah.
It's a great horror movie and it deserves more people to watch it. It's over 35 years old at this point, or it's 37 years old at this point. And if Herschel Walker's going to do anything, let him accidentally get more people to watch Fright Night.
Perfect. Yeah. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the LasseterCast. Thank you guys so much for watching, and Danny and I will be back for episodes 4 through 6 of Quiet Part Loud next time.